This is a response to a video by warblesonalot called Autism and Atheism, 90% Correlation. I left a comment on a response to a comment that you made on one of Potola 54's videos there, Chris, but since you've made a video about this, I thought perhaps I'd amplify that comment in video form. I think you're all over the place in this video, and quite frankly you're just wrong in many cases. I mean, I'll start with the end. You talk about a 90% correlation of atheists and autists. That's not the case. There's a 90% correlation of autists with atheists. It isn't one of those equations that goes the same in either direction. It really isn't. And the implication of the article isn't just a correlation, it's a particular kind of correlation, it's a causal correlation. The implication of that article, and the small section of the article, is that as you point out, because you mentioned it elsewhere, and as the article says, some people who have autism have difficulties recognizing mind out there in the world, in the presence of other people, for example. There's a very famous autistic person called, oh God, what's she called? It'll come back to me. But she describes having dinner with her family, and she described it as looking around the table and just seeing sacks of skin draped over the chairs. She doesn't project mind into those bodies. Temple Grandin is her name. But but that's a one-way direction. You know, that apparent deficiency in the ability to recognise mentalism at work in other people. That's an explanation for why autistic people might be atheists. It's nothing to do with why atheists are atheists. There's many other reasons why people are atheists. And one of the overriding things that you've got going on there, Chris, which I was a bit surprised by, given your background, is that you know as well as I do that people who have autism are not deficient right across the board. I mean, they're cognitively different for sure, but in many cases they have a better perception of the world than people who are non-autistic. We all know about savants, you know, we all know about those parts of it. But yeah, one of the ways in which autists, in some cases at least, may have a better and clearer perception of the world is by not randomly projecting mind where it doesn't belong. I mean, there is a hypothesis put forward by a philosopher, psychologist called Justin Barrett, where he talks about what he calls the hyperactive agency detector. And there's variations across this in different theorists. The agency detector is the name he gives to those particular cognitive functions which allow us to spot agency in the world. You know, we see something that looks like it's alive and we recognise it as agency straight away. And we all occasionally make mistakes in that, don't we? You know, we sometimes attribute living qualities to things that aren't alive. We just consciously or unconsciously, with more or less a degree of awareness, we attribute agency to where it doesn't belong. And Justin Barrett says that, or suggests that a hyperactive agency detector, one that's firing too much, in a sense the opposite of the underactive agency detector which some autistic people may have, that a hyperactive capacity to apply agency in the world underpins a lot of religious belief, particularly something like pantheism that you mentioned. It's almost like man writ large. You know, what you see agency at work in the world all the time when you've got hyperactive agency detector going on. And that seems to be characteristic of some religious belief. Not all. I'm not painting with a broad brush here. I'm just saying that there is certainly a tendency, and quite frankly you seem to have this, to see agency at work, to see the hand of God at work as if it was a man writ large. Which is kind of the opposite of, as I said, of an underactive agency detector, which is common amongst some autistic people. But in this case, I think autistic people are probably right. You know, I'm sorry, they're probably right. There are lots of cases which I'm sure you would agree with when attributing agency is wrong. You know, if you see, sometimes you see a rock roll down a hillside, and it just bounces in that way, which catches your eye, and you think it's an animal moving, and you realise afterwards, oh yeah, I was mistaken. But the mistake is that your agency detector is overacting, and many religious people see that all the time. They never just see, oh, it's just a rock. to think that this agency at work, the hand of God, is at work, and the mind of God is saturating this universe. And there doesn't seem to be any evidence for that at all. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, the one interesting thing I find in all this, which is probably psychological babble, I don't know, but it's to do with, recognizing agency in oneself. Because, you talk a little bit about the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, again citing the New Scientist stuff, and how we tend to grow out of those things. Whereas in some cases people grow into religious belief, as you seem to have done, come out of atheism, and then start believing in a higher mind, or a larger mind, or something like a mind, that kind of agency at work, and which does distinguish it for sure. But up to the age of about 2 or 3, we don't even occupy our own mind in the same way, do we? We don't come to consciousness, we don't come to realise, we don't come to believe in our own existence until, as I say, until the age of about 2. We have a very different kind of sense, and it's not really until we've formulated an image of ourselves at the age of 2 or 3, and then invest it with agency, project agency into ourselves and call it an I, and then start living ourselves and driving ourselves through the world like a video game. It's not, that is a very particular part of human development, isn't it? That where we start to believe in the figment of our own imagination, in ourselves as a figment of our own imagination that we come to believe in. So it may be that there is a version of God. It's heavily psychologized. It doesn't have a presence in the world, in which you start to believe in a different kind of version of yourself, which isn't quite as bound to the individual human body, or something. I don't know. It's just a thought. But generally, I think you're mistaken with some of this stuff. The 90% correlation is just way off. Sorry. Anyway, thank you very much.